can.
Yeah, I know it. Session 11, Session 11, this was bad for me.
It is.
I think in y'all's book it's page 148.
Yep. Yep.
I got my glasses here.
You're sitting in the blind.
Yeah. Well, I dropped my glasses and then looking for my stepped on. It just mashed them flat. So these I got are just reading glasses. I can read fine, but when I look up,
Yep, like my computer glasses.
everything's blurry. So it's aggravating, but I don't have an eye for it until June, I think. What are we on? You said 10?
11.
Mine's 146.
You're on 146?
What's that?
Turn the page.
Turn the page, all right. Okay. There we go. Strong relationships.
Are you there?
I'm ready. Yeah.
Okay. Well, Brother Paul, won't you start us out with prayer?
Be glad to. Father, we just thank you so much to be able to get together and this thing that's happened has given me a better idea of fellowship and how wonderful it was to be able to drive out of my driveway and come to church and fellowship with Brother Doug and Brian and Brother Lee, and it kind of just gives me a better glimpse of what heaven will be like. Thank you for your many wonderful blessings. And Father, I don't mean to be mean about this virus, but to me it's been helpful, and I thank you for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I thank you for those wonderful words of life that you've written back to us, and you tell us all about what we should do in just being obedient. Thank you for our class. Thank you for Brother Lee. In Jesus' precious name. Amen.
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 All righty. Excuse me. I'm going to read some things to you from out of my book that you don't have. But it says about this session, this strong relationship, and the key truth is, in my book, it says, disciple making requires serious, purposeful relationships for your own growth and the growth of others. Have you found, well, when you're helping somebody or guiding somebody, discipling somebody, or even on the job, whenever you might have been training somebody, that you found that relationship build and all?
Just last night,
How's that?
my neighbor, her and her son, you know, they have a son has Down syndrome that they got out, or they're walking. Anyway, they come by the house and they stopped in. Well, she was brought up Lutheran, and they had been baptized with the Holy Spirit, speaking in tongues, and all that Pentecostal stuff. So we were just talking, and I'm not really trying to convert her, but we were just discussing, and it happened to come up about speaking in tongues, and I said, well, I don't support that, and we got into it in a nice way. And so I just took my Bible, and I said, where do you get that? That's one of the things that's kind of dawned on me. When somebody says something anymore, I like to know where they got it out of the Bible. Anyway, I asked her, where'd you get that at? In Acts. And I said, Pentecost? Yes. So I got my Bible out, and we were reading that, and she says, the disciples talking about they were witnesses, and she says, well, it says right there that they were talking in tongues, but the Bible also says that they were renowned men from every nation under the sun. And I told her they had come from every country to Jerusalem for the Passover feast, which was very important to them, and there was different dialects in each one of them. And it also said, and they heard the message in their own language.
Yep.
And she just quit. So, and it just, I thought, you know, it was nice to be able to discuss.
Now, in that, it benefited you, and it benefited her.
It might have benefited her to a degree,
Right.
but I don't think it changed her opinion of speaking in tongues.
Yeah.
What else goes with that? Speaking in tongues and
Healing.
healing.
Yeah.
Several different things, and so I don't think it really done any good, because
Yeah.
I've been witnessing to them for a couple of years now,
Right.
and I can't see any change in their attitude as far as that belief goes.
And you might not ever see it. You might not ever see them converted with it.
Probably won't.
Yeah.
You know, I've not come to a conclusion. It's hard. Well, you're not going to get somebody to change their mind unless the Spirit leads them.
Right.
You know, so.
Well, I found when I went to work for firefighters, the guy that was training me with the alarm systems and all wasn't a 22-year-old kid, and I was 50.
Really?
Yeah. And everybody thought I was the boss because I was old,
Mm.
and he was young. I said, no, he's actually training me and teaching me. You know, he's young, he understands all the computers, and it's nice to say he's learned me. But in that relationship of him teaching me, I learned things from him, but he also learned some things from me. You know, and that's kind of what this is really talking about. Discipleship requires a relationship with that person. Not just like, okay, I won't be your teacher, you're going to be my student, now you hear everything I say, and that's it. No, it's different than that. It builds a relationship with that person. You really get to know them. And here in my book it says, we can't make disciples if we don't connect with other people. We can't be an island to ourselves. Where we can't, and even in the church, if this thing here does anything for the church, I hope it helps the church to realize it's not about just being here for fellowship, but it's about being out there, you know, with people. I'm amazed at the attitude of people. A lot of it's changed. Abby was coming out of the store, Adria was going into the store and just came out at Winn-Dixie. And a friend of hers had just came out, was going to her car, and she saw her, and Adria stopped and talked to her. Hadn't seen her in the store, but they were, and Adria had told her, she said, they were talking, and she said, I just can't believe there's no bread. And the girl said, you need some bread? I said, yes. She said, here. She sat down a loaf of bread. She said, you can get that bread, it's yours. She said, I bought 2 loaves. She said, I don't want to take your bread. She said, no. If you don't pick that up, somebody else is going to, because I'm going. You know, just the attitude of people, you know, and that's relationships. You know, having to build a relationship like that and all. He said this one thing that stuck out to me. He says, Christians often fall into the trap of believing casual relationships can produce meaningful discipleship. But how can we casually know this person and disciple them? We can't. We've got to build a relationship with them. It's got to be more than that. It's got to be talking to them and this, that, and the other, and spending time with them, having lunch with them, you know, whatever. You know, if they need help, go help them, and so forth, you know. And speaking of helping, Carrie Corley, Brother Paul, you know who Carrie is? Wears the overalls.
Here at church?
Yeah.
I thought you was talking about Terry's mama.
No.
Did she tell you about that?
Huh?
I asked her, how's your mama? She said, well, she's fine. Well, you had said in our class that Carrie has turned his mother over to, I thought you said Terry had turned
Oh.
the mother over to hospice.
Okay, okay.
So what about him?
Anyway, y'all know Kerry, he's limited in his abilities and so forth because of his health and all.
Yeah.
He's been approved. He made an offer on a house. About 30 days or whatever it's going to take now, he'll have him a house and all. And thinking about helping somebody, making that relationship and building it, he's probably going to need help moving, and he may even need help in the house. I don't know what work may need to be done there, what have you, but you know, doing things like that's what builds relationships with people.
Absolutely.
You know, whether we know them like we know Carrie or not, but I just thought about him. You know, he may need some help. You know, we all helped Melba at different times. You know, with her moving stuff and so forth, and all. And that's what, like, it can't just be haphazard here and there. If we're going to make disciples of people, we've really got to spend time with them. And so I was amazed when it said often we fall into that idea that we can be casual friends and disciple somebody. It takes a lot more than that. It takes getting to know them.
Sure.
And them getting to know you really.
Yeah.
Now the other thing is, in the previous session, which Brian did, and I appreciate it, we saw an effective model of disciple making through the example of Paul and Timothy. And you know, true. I always said my Paul was Brother Bumpers. You know, he was my mentor. He's the one I turned to. He's the one I talked to and see that. And everybody needs that person. You know, somebody in their life and all. I need that person again. You know, Brother Lynn Massey offered. You know, if you need somebody to talk to, I know I'm not Brother Bumpers, but he realizes he's older and I'm younger, and he could help me with a lot of things. So anyway, the lesson we're doing tonight picks up dealing with this relationship again, where we left off last week talking about them. This week we're talking about Elijah and Elisha, two prophets, and here and all. Did you get to read your book and read that where it talked about the Karate Kid? You get to read your book, Will Paul? Okay. You probably don't know what the movie The Karate Kid is.
Who?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
to
Karate Kid?
The Karate Kid. It was a movie to give you.
Very popular movie.
Yes, very popular. But it was about a kid that moved to a new town, and he got bullied by the local kids and all, who were karate experts, member of a dojo and all. And he was getting beat up, and this old man who was a gardener, Mr. Miyagi, steps in and fights off.
Trains him.
Then winds up
I
training
wrote a
him.
book about that. It seemed to me like I read that book.
You might have read that book, but he winds up training me
Yeah.
in that, and that is a picture of mentoring somebody.
Didn't you have to stand on a fence post or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
One-legged?
Yeah. That's it.
Yeah.
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 It talks about this Karate Kid in our book, and Mr. Miyagi, it tells the story about it, and then a few paragraphs in there. But he became, I will never forget, Daniel's son. You know, that's what Miyagi called him, Daniel's son. And that relationship built through them years. Daniel's dad was nowhere in his life. He only had his mom. So that man really took a lot on him. And I think he learned something from him too. But if you look in the fourth paragraph, there on page 148, in the introduction part of it, it says the relationship. Y'all see that?
Yep.
Between Daniel.
Yeah. The relationship between Daniel and Mr. Miyagi is more than a friendship. Okay? It is more than a coach training a player or a guide taking someone to a great adventure. Their relationship is strategic, personal, and purposeful. In many ways, it's a relationship that mirrors much of what can happen and should happen between makers and disciples. Because it did come more, you know. There was a birthday. Mr. Miyagi's there, Daniel's there, you know, in that movie. There's all kind of different things that's done. Of course, Mr. Miyagi got a lot of work done around his house, and Daniel didn't realize at the time he was training him. And you know, sometimes in our disciple making, we may not realize it, or they may not realize that if we're smart in our training them, we might be getting something out of it as well as they're getting a lesson learned. You know, giving them assignments. Hey, you need to read this, and I want you to write what you learned from it, which could benefit a Sunday school teacher, you know, or somebody teaching, you know, with that. So we see that friendship, and it's even more than that. And that's why we got to be with disciples when we make it. And you know, when I was studying this and looking at it and all, and we're coming to the end of this class, I was thinking, we've done this, but now where are we going to find, each one of us find somebody that we can mentor? You know, we got to find that person. And if you just thought about in the church, who would you mentor? Who would you be able to help them become a stronger disciple?
That's a tough
Any and all.
Well, be specific. You know.
I don't know anyone that I would choose singularly. Well, Tyler's really the only younger one here.
I think James Callis.
Huh?
James Callis would be
James
good.
Callis, yeah.
He would be a good one to mentor and bring along.
Yeah.
Tyler definitely. And I think a lot of the men have somewhat taken that on.
Mm-hmm.
You know. But even age, you don't have to look at age. Look at spiritual development.
Mm-hmm.
You know. Sometimes it's hard to mentor an older person if they don't want to.
Well, I think it's hard to mentor any person if they don't want.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
That's a true statement.
Yeah, but even an older person.
I don't think the older you get, the more set you get in your ways and don't want to change.
Right.
What would you know about that?
How would I know about it?
What would you know about that?
Oh, I got a nice comfortable nest. Don't mess with me.
Oh. All right. Look over on page 149. And there's a paragraph under Know the Story right there. You see that right there?
Disciple relationships
Yeah, keep on reading since you started it.
are like no other connection you've experienced. They're transformational rather than informational. They require people to do life together in a way that cannot stay on the surface. They go deep. We can find an example of such a relationship in the Old Testament when we explore the connection between Elijah and Elisha.
Brother Paul, do you think there's anything that you could do, well, or some kind of tool that you have, an ability that you could use to mentor somebody with?
Yes, I do.
I can think of one very important one that you could do, and that person may not even realize that you're using the discipleship.
And
Or
I might
something.
not realize it either.
Your organic garden.
Oh. Right.
Well, you think about it. If somebody took an interest in organic gardening from
Yes, yes.
you could teach them, man, you could be teaching them this organic garden and take them back to the Garden of Eden
Certainly.
and talk about it. You can also talk about how it takes planting that seed and watering it and nurturing it, take care for it to grow into something,
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yep.
The fruit of the vine.
Yeah.
Pruning the dead.
Right.
Yeah, you could go a long way with that.
Yeah.
You sure could.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, you're right.
So that, I mean, that's a tool for you to use, you know, in this. Sometimes we don't think about those things, but there's a good way to do it, you know. If we could raise Tyler up, his knowledge with bicycles, think what he could do with younger guys.
Yeah, and he and I have had that conversation, just to plant that seed in his head. He and I have had it more than once.
You know?
And he's receptive to that idea too.
I mean, you think about it, bicycles break.
That's right.
People break.
Yep.
Things happen in our lives. Don't expect it. And sometimes things break in our lives because we don't take care of it, just like we don't take care of our bicycles.
Mm-hmm.
You know? A lot of discipling ways we can do it, and finding that person to mentor, sometimes it needs to look at our own selves and find somebody that has something or desire something that we have in common. You know?
Well, the thought that comes to my mind is a lot of times we can get too busy
Absolutely, Brother Paul.
and just fail to realize the person that we're talking to really needs help, but we're too busy in our daily walk, work, whatever,
Right.
to take the time to just befriend them.
Mm-hmm.
That would be sort of a discipleship. I mean, that's why I said any and everybody. Like the lady that come to visit last night, her and her son there. That was a good opportunity to let her know about that baptism of the Holy Spirit. Not baptism of the Holy Spirit, but the day of Pentecost.
Yeah.
It was good for her, and it was good for me as well.
Right. Right.
So I think if we'd just be more attentive to the leadership of the Holy Spirit, we would have many more opportunities to be a discipler.
And if we would focus on one person, now you think about it, that don't seem like much. I'm going to focus on one person. But what if you focus on that one person, and 3 years from now, they're ready to look at somebody else to do something. Well, now they've got a person, you start with a new person. Now there's 4. The next year there's what, 8? And that's that multiplication and all. And so sometimes it's not trying to disciple the whole world, it's starting with a few. Jesus spent 3 years with 12 men.
Yep.
Now, I think his success rate was pretty good. 11 out of 12?
Yep.
I think that's a good success rate. And I think when he chose the 12th one, he knew that he was not going to make it anyway.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, he knew.
Yeah. So, but we come back to the Bible. We're going to be looking here in a minute, 1 Kings 19. But we're going to be talking about Elijah and Elisha. What do you think, what stories come to your mind when you think about Elijah and Elisha?
Give me a double portion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
First thing I think of. Yeah.
Yep. And that's true. I want a double portion. So I tell you what, sometimes you can ask for more than you need, can't you? And a double portion takes a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
All right. They were both what? Prophets, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
What did a prophet do during their time? Do you know what they did?
Prophesied.
You were smart. Well, they had to hear from God first.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And whatever they heard from God, they had to tell whoever God told them to tell it to. That's what a prophet was. They were to do that and all. So they did that. Well, in 1 Kings 19, 15 through 21, let's read that and look at it. And Brian, you want to read that for us?
Sure. Take a shot.
Okay.
And the Lord said unto him, Go, return on thy way to the wilderness of Damascus, and when thou comest, anoint Hazael to be king over Syria. And Jehu, the son of Nimshi, shalt thou anoint to be king over Israel. And Elisha, the son of Shaphat, and Abel-Manolah, shalt thou anoint to be prophet in thy room. And it shall come to pass that him that escapeth the sword of Hazael shall Jehu slay, and him that escapeth from the sword of Jehu shall Elisha slay. Yet I have left me 7,000 in Israel, all the knees which have not bowed unto Baal, and every mouth which hath not kissed him. So he departed thence, and found Elisha the son of Shaphat, who was plowing with 12 yoke of oxen before him, and he with the 12th. And Elijah passed him, and cast his mantle upon him.
21, 22.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know. I had 19 on the brain. And he left the oxen and ran after Elijah and said, Let me, I pray thee, kiss my father and mother, and then I will follow thee. And he said unto him, Go back again, for what have I done to thee? And he returned back from him, and took a yoke of oxen, and slew them, and boiled their flesh with the instruments of the oxen, and gave unto the people, and they did eat. Then he arose and went after Elijah and ministered unto him.
Now, we're going to see Elijah is his mentor, right? What do we find out about Elijah and Elisha from this passage? What do we see about the two of them? Well, what do we see about Elijah?
What is there?
Well, he was a messenger of God. God gave him words to speak to the nation of Israel about their Baal worship. And he was, up until he met Jezebel, I think he was a brave man. And I really don't know why he ran from her, but he did.
Threatened his life. She was queen. That's, you know.
Yeah.
But when you read this scripture that we just read, what do we see about Elijah and Elisha? Learn about them in this here. You said, and I said it earlier, that as a prophet, God speaks to them to tell somebody else. Mm-hmm. So God speaks to Elijah, we saw that, and Elijah goes and speaks to Elisha, the message. Right. And here. And so we see the prophecy being done and being carried out, and we find that Elijah becomes Elisha's mentor. He trains him. That's what God told him. He said, in verse 16, shalt thou anoint to be prophet in thy room. He's going to replace you. Go anoint him, and he's going to replace you. So you got to train him, you got to teach him, and all. So go be his mentor.
Well, wouldn't that be a perfect example of discipleship?
Mm-hmm, it is.
Discipling Elijah,
yep.
Discipled Elisha.
That's right. That's exactly what it is. Taking that person on. Mm-hmm. Their relationship. He throws his mantle on him, right? And he goes back. What do you see about Elisha in here? Anything special about Elisha?
He seems willing.
Well, I think he shows a love for his parents.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to go back and bid them farewell.
Yep. Okay. So we see that. We know the rest of the story. And we know they built a great relationship together and all. In people's lives over the last 10 years, what do you think's happened to relationships?
Most of them went down the tube.
Relationships today are different. They're not the same like they used to be 10 years ago, 20 years ago.
Yep. Not by a long shot.
Go back to your childhood. Did you have a childhood friend?
No.
Close to him? My childhood buddy, we were tight from first grade to 10th grade. He started choosing some other friends and I went to another school. Even though we still only lived about 2 miles apart. Totally went different ways. You know. My high school friends, Charlie and I became good buddies in 10th grade through graduation, and I left and went off to college, and he went to barber school and wound up getting married and this, that, and the other, and we've talked once or twice since then. Relationships aren't what they used to be. You know? Even the guy who was my best man, roommates in college, you know, best of friends, been my best man. After I got married, he got married, and it was, I didn't even know he moved back to Kentucky till somebody had told me. He'd been there 20 years before I found out, you know. So relationships, they're just not what they used to be. So if they're not what they used to be, if they're changed in 10 years, why must we get more serious about the relationship of someone we're going to disciple? Why would we need to be more serious about it? Could it be because relationships don't last?
Yeah, and the message that would send, if you're talking about God,
Right.
You could just undo all of that by allowing a relationship to fail.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be very careful.
Yeah. Used to be, you grew up in the church and you died in that same church.
So did your daddy, and so did your granddaddy.
Mm-hmm. It was. But unfortunately, you look back and how many pastors do those churches have?
Not near as many as it did today.
We still I look back, when I was a kid, there was a pastor at the church. Then he was gone, then there was a pastor there. And he was there for years. Mm-hmm. You know, Brother Bumpers was at his church for years, only church he ever pastored. You know, you look at this church's history. Until I came along, they had one pastor stayed 7 years, one pastor stayed 12 years. Outside of that, from 1942, and you figure in how many years it was, every 18 months, 9 months to 3 years, they changed pastors. And that was very common. How do you build a relationship? How do you disciple anybody in the church?
Well, it's kind of hard to build a relationship a lot of times in our day and time because of transit. People are
Isn't it?
moving. They don't stay like they used to.
It's true.
You
Yeah.
know? And so really, if you're going to build a relationship, you have to do it pretty much in a hurry.
You know, I think back when I was a kid, I never thought about my parents ever leaving where we grew up. I never thought about me moving from that area. And I figured that I'd get a piece of land and build right there where my family was, you know. Mm-hmm. But that didn't happen, you know. In that area where we grew up, there used to be Uncle Hayward, Grandma and Granddaddy. There was us, Uncle Junior, and Uncle Henry. Those were Browards right there. Uncle Henry, he's left, and Aunt Rosemary's left. Everybody else is gone or died. You know, the family's just not there. And with that kind of transit, my cousin Gary, who was next door, we were just a year or two apart, grew up together, went to school together, all this. He goes off to college and then comes back, took a church in Baldwin, left here, went to Virginia, and took a church there. come back and had a church in McClenny, and had a church here off of Melson Avenue, and then he pastored Bay Meadows. I mean, you know, just people are moving, just everywhere. But why we got them? If they're not transient, if they're not moving, and we're not moving because of our job or this, that, and the other, we need to take time to make sure we spend time with them and do what we can and all. When we enter into a disciple-making relationship, we must do it with a seriousness of purpose and commitment. You think about that. We must be serious. But what about that discipler or that person we're trying to disciple? They need to be serious too, don't they?
Yep.
Can we get people to be serious about things like that today?
It's difficult.
Isn't it? I see some that are going to these new churches, and I don't understand how they're able to get these young people to do these classes, to do these Bible studies, to be disciples. I see it now, whether they're teaching them right or wrong.
No, that's the other thing. You don't know what they're being taught.
But I see them committed to it. You know?
Well, but you can count on the one thing, it's fun. What
Yeah.
they're doing, it must be fun.
It's going to be fun.
Because it's competing with the world successfully, apparently.
Yeah. I just see it. I see more people who will volunteer in some of these other churches. And I mean, they'll volunteer to spend 3 days working in a daycare. And you don't see a lot of that volunteer. I don't, in our church or in other churches around, you just don't see a lot of that. I don't see a lot of seriousness at all. In this story about Elijah and Elisha, where's the evidence of seriousness?
Well, Elisha didn't have any problem following Elijah.
Well, as a matter of fact, Elijah told him to go back 2 or 3 times. And he said, no, I'm not leaving you.
And
He
it
stuck with it.
makes you wonder why. Why was he telling him to go back, and why was it he kept coming?
He wanted what Elijah had.
How long had he known him? Had he just knew of him? I don't know if they just met him.
I'm sure the word of who Elijah was preceded him.
When you think about it, when Elijah's walking along, as far as we know, he just walks along and sees Elisha, and Elisha's out there plowing. There's 12 sets of oxen. He's the 12th set on the plow. There's other guys, 11 other people with oxes and plows doing it. He's his 12th guy. Elisha walks up to him and throws his mantle on him, his overcoat. Wait a minute, I'm plowing, you giving me this coat? Had to be something that he knew about him.
I'd say they probably were lifetime friends or lifetime acquaintances. I've read that in that day and time, a person very rarely ever traveled over 5 miles from their home.
A lot of foot walking.
They walked everywhere they went.
That's what I mean, a lot of
That's all
foot
they
walking,
did,
yeah.
was walk. So I think probably Elisha knew Elijah, and especially what he stood for.
Certainly knew of him anyway.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
His testimony was everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I
all.
believe that.
So he comes along. You think about it, God told this older man to go find this younger man, Elisha, and take him under his wing. I want you to do that. I think that tells us something. That we that are older need to look to the younger and take them under. I wonder how many of the younger people, younger adults would have done that if we had taken them under our wing.
Yeah, if it was a natural progression of, if it was just expected and understood and it happened.
Well, that kind of reminds me of that, Samuel being there with us.
Uh-huh.
You
He's
know,
talking about Ron's son.
Okay.
He sat in on one of our sessions, and one of his comments was it was very boring.
Yeah.
And how old was he?
22. And Ron kind of put him on the spot, but he said, "You're sitting at the feet of a wealth of knowledge. What questions would you ask these men?" And of course Samuel didn't see that coming, had no questions he wanted to ask. Kind of put him on the spot, but yeah, but the thing is, the kind of discipleship that we're talking about is more out of the ordinary. It should be ordinary, it should be how things are all the time. And you ask, what if younger men were discipled, would they be discipling also? And yeah, but today, you reach out to somebody with that intention and they think it's strange because it's not the normal. That's not what we teach, it's not what we practice, it's not what we model in front of them.
And that's got to change.
Yes, it does.
You know, it needs to change.
That's no small task.
No, it's not. It's not easy. By no means. And one thing is, you stop and think about it, Elijah went to where Elisha was.
Yep.
In the field. He didn't expect Elisha to come to him. He went to him. And Elijah's testimony was enough to strike Elisha's desire to follow him. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it was common practice and everybody knew that if the prophet put his cloak on you, that meant you're to follow him or what.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, it seemed like there was an understanding there. You know, with that.
The message was clear.
Yeah. But he followed him and went after him and all. To be able to engage, and we just talked about this, to engage in this lifestyle of discipling, you know, it takes a serious commitment on our part who's going to be doing the discipling. That's a serious commitment. I wonder how we're going to get those younger ones to be serious in their commitment.
You have to model.
It's getting harder and harder and harder.
I think they have to be attracted towards us somehow.
This world has a lot more to offer them.
That's right.
Than they did in my lifetime.
Right.
Oh, so that's why I say that it's getting harder and harder and harder.
You know, Brother Paul, in the situation we're in right now, I bet if we continue jobs being lost, this going on, there might be some 25, 30-year-old guys that wouldn't want to come to Paul Hageman's house and say, teach me how to garden.
Well, absolutely. I think if this situation continues to get worse, there's going to be a lot of people dependent on other people. You know, in our lifestyle and time, up to this point, it's been more of an isolated situation. People don't need other people.
Right.
You know, but that could turn around.
I watched the news story this morning. The pastor from Victory Church in Tulsa, Oklahoma. I guess it's I don't know if they use the term mega church, but it's quite a large church. And this guy was probably in his early 30s. The pastor of this big church was probably in his early 30s, might have been late 20s. And he's doing the car radio services.
Right.
So he's standing up on what looked like it was a scissor lift. I remember him talking about the scissor lift. So he's up on a scissor lift looking out over this large parking lot with all these people. And of course he can't hear them talking, so they're communicating back to him by honking their horns.
Right.
And but he was saying that not only was his service successful, but because of this business with businesses closing down, people losing their jobs and things like that, and all the calamity, he said there's a flood of people coming to him wanting to know more about God, wanting to find the peace that they're looking for, and so he's got plenty of opportunities just as a result of the buyer's business.
I think we're going to see more of it.
Probably so.
I think people are going to start thinking.
How prepared are we for that?
People are running scared.
Yeah.
But I had a comment made just recently about one of these new denominations, and they said that their pastor reminded them of Tiny Tim. And that song he sang back in the 60s.
Yeah.
That's what he's doing with the word. He's tiptoeing through the word. He's shallow.
Right.
And they've been, for years and years and years now, there's been a lot of shallow preaching done. And people are just not prepared. I'm talking about Christians. Christians just aren't prepared to go into something like we're headed into.
No, they're not. They're not. And that may be a great opportunity for us to disciple some.
I think it will be.
But our church is not prepared.
Not as a whole.
I mean, look at this. We're
Right.
discipleship training. There's only, 4 of us attending.
Yeah.
When everybody's here,
Right.
there's 4 disciples. But we're not prepared to do that. Last week we talked about discipling intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
That you don't accidentally disciple somebody. That was, I think the main thrust of last week was being intentional, and this is kind of picking up with that, but
This was bringing us about being serious about it,
yeah,
being committed.
and I don't see it, I don't see us doing it. It hasn't been done for us, hasn't
Right.
been done to us, hasn't been done with us, and I don't know how we're gonna, and I'm speaking collectively, not personally, but
My hope is, may sound crazy, my hope is with relocation, hopefully new blood will come in, and we reach some young people, and we can encourage them by doing the Wednesday, remember I told about Wednesday night small group class and so forth, and doing a class with discipling as one of it, and making it where they will want to come into it, and having other classes on Wednesday night. And it may be what changes things, makes a difference.
Yep.
we have to model the behavior that we expect out of
That's right.
our disciples.
Right. One thing is, and we're talking about commitment again, people didn't want to commit to a year of Thursday night.
Yeah.
I'm already going Sunday morning, Sunday night, and Wednesday night.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do Thursday night and commit to it for a year.
I can't speak for Paul, but personally, I can't hardly believe how fast that year has gone by.
It's hard to believe it's been a year.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like
Yeah.
we've been at it for a year.
Right.
And actually longer, because there have been a few skip weeks, but still,
Right.
that was well invested as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Yeah. I said that some didn't want to give that Thursday night time because they already come Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. But one thing about, you got to count the cost. Where's the church going to be 5 more years, 10 more years?
That's not the cost they count.
I know it. But isn't that the cost we should count, where the church
Yes.
is going to be?
Of course.
We're going to go backwards instead of forward
That's the cost.
if we don't disciple.
Instead, it's what's my cost.
Yeah, I'm not going to give up Thursday night because I got this going on.
Yeah.
Or I'm doing this.
Right.
Or I'm doing that. Yeah.
That's wrong thinking.
Right. Yeah.
But you're right, that's what it is. That's exactly.
Now, if we're coming Thursday night because we're going to eat and have some games, I might show up once in a while.
Once in a while, but not regularly, not every. No.
The cost isn't worth it to me.
It's not very kingdom minded.
No, it's not. No. No. All right. Elisha. How do we see him embracing the sacrifice of discipleship? And let me take this to another level here with it. What do we see Elisha do